Hello, and welcome to another program of Relationships Revealed. I'm Pastor Frank Lewis, and I'm really glad you're here today. And I want to tell you about my book. This is the foundation piece of Relationships Revealed. I am going to be talking about marriage today, and there's some problems that people are having in marriages today because of unresolved emotional pain. We talked at that as being the basis, the real basis of all marital problems, really of all relationship problems, and I discussed that in my book. And you can get this book on Amazon. I also have a website, and the website for Relationships Revealed is relationshipsrevealed.org. That's relationshipsrevealed.org. And there you can see the 7 books that I'm writing on relationships, the 7 books I'm working on right now. This first one is on marriage, but you'll see 2 buttons. One is Learn More, and that will take you to a page that you can fill in and you can get in touch with me. And then the other button is going to be Want Help. And if you want help, you want me to get back to you and talk to you about some things that you need help with, just press that button. If you give me your phone number, I'll be able to get back much more efficiently and effectively, or one of my people will. But you can get an opportunity to talk to me about your problems, and that'll be helpful. Well, last week, you remember that we talked about emotional triggers. Emotional triggers are when something, brain scientists tell us that emotional triggers are when something remotely similar happens in the present that happened in the past. And what that causes is that the way God designed our brains is that what we experienced in the past will come forward into the present in nanoseconds. That's a billionth of a second, folks. That is very, very, very fast. But it comes forward so fast that you would swear that it was happening right now. And so it causes problems in marriage that are very, very difficult to handle, because, like it did with me, because I could have sworn that my wife was hurting me on purpose. The things she was saying were on purpose, and they were hurting me. And I didn't ever realize until I really got into studying brain science, and I began to really realize that it was really inside of me. And by the way, it's inside of you or your spouse. And so if you get triggered, that means you lose your self-control, because your brain, the way it works is your left side of your brain shuts down and your right side takes over. That means all logic, all Bible, all the things you've plugged in through your 5 physical senses go away. And so somebody says, I lost my mind. Well, they're not too far from wrong, because that's what actually almost ends up happening, is the left side, the reasoning side of the brain is shut down. And what we do is we do what we learn to do to survive. We fight, we flight, run away, or we freeze. And so that's what we do. Now, the reason for triggers is because of false beliefs. And we went through that, and that is actually in the book. And so it's in the book, and it is very, very important that for marriage to be successful, that you have an understanding of what's happening with triggers. It's never the other person, it's always me. So I had to look at my wife. She was a gift. And I learned a lot because of her causing me to trigger. Well, today we're going to look at another aspect of what makes marriage so difficult. I'm actually working with you and sharing with you the different things that make marriage so difficult. And at the root of all of them is unresolved emotional pain. And so today we're going to look at emotional immaturity and how that causes problems in marriage. Emotional immaturity is a very, very big problem for marriages. If you don't have a spouse that is emotionally mature, and we're going to discuss that in a little different context than just age. It's not just age. It is absolutely getting things done, tasks and requirements that had to be done for the developmental stage that we were in at that time. And so I have a chapter here, I believe it's chapter 13, let me check that real quick, and it's called, "There Are Not Many Emotionally Mature Christians." That is really a statement, but it's absolutely true. And so what we're going to talk about today is in my book. And we're going to talk about, from the book, 3 different levels of emotional stages, if you will, of emotional maturity. 3 levels of stages of emotional maturity. And we're going to talk about the first one, and the first one is infant level emotional maturity. Now, as you might guess, when we're talking about infant, we're talking about baby, small, a toddler, a small child. And it's developmental scientists, and that's where I'm taking a lot of this from, is developmental psychology and developmental scientists that actually have worked in understanding these different stages of development. And the infant stage is really set up in an understanding of what happened to us from 0 to 3. So we're looking at 0 to 3, and what we're looking at is, did we get bonded? Did we build trust in our parents? Now, if our parents were timely, meeting our needs, and I also talk about that in depth in the book, parents need to meet parents need to meet babies and infants' needs in a timely manner. Do you know why that's so important? That's so important because that's how trust is built. If a baby cries and cries and cries and cries because the need isn't met and sitting in a poopy diaper or hungry or colic or whatever, what happens is that baby loses trust because there's no relief. And if you leave a baby long enough, studies showed the baby will actually just totally shut down. Absolutely, totally shut down. They just think they're going to die. Well, in this situation, at the infant level, what happens is if we didn't get build that trust and get that bonding is in relationships is like glue. And so we're supposed to be glued to mom first and then mom and dad. Mom first because she's the one who does so much of the breastfeeding and taking care of. Dad does too, but not as much. What happens is there's bonding. Supposed to be bonding. There usually isn't, and that's a big problem. And that's one of the things that keep people stuck at the emotional level, even as adults. If you didn't get trust built with mom and dad, and you didn't get bonding, you're going to have bonding problems for the rest of your life, and we're going to talk about that in next week and how that affects so many marriage relationships. But right now we're talking about infant level of emotional maturity, and we didn't get the bonding, we didn't get the attachment. That's another word for bonding, or it's like bonding. If we don't build that trust, that's a problem. Now, here's the other problem that keep people stuck as infants in emotional maturity. Here's what the brain scientists and the social scientists tell us. A baby is supposed to be emotionally resilient. Mom helps a baby become emotionally resilient, come out of a trigger, an emotional upset, in 90 seconds. Now, I know a lot of adults that can't come out of an emotional upset in a week, let alone 90 seconds. And so what ends up happening then is that the baby gets stuck. If mom doesn't know what mom's doing to bring the baby out of emotional upset in a timely manner, then what happens is, or if the baby's or the infant is left alone to go through their own emotions, what happens is the baby then, or the infant, becomes afraid of their emotions. They become afraid of their emotions. And that's something that causes marriage problems later on with adults, is they're afraid of their emotions because they never got an understanding of how do we resolve these emotions. So if there's one of the things the Bible talks about is in the fruits of the Spirit is self-control. Well, how are you going to have self-control if you're not going to be able to get out of an emotional upset? Some people stay in emotional upset, like I said, for a week, 2 weeks. Some people stay in emotional upset and unforgiveness for years. So it's a problem. So we're supposed to have learned how to do that. If we don't, we're going to have emotional triggers. As we talked about last week, we're going to have emotional triggers. And if we can't come out of an emotional upset in 90 minutes to 5 minutes, what's going to happen is we're going to be stuck in emotional upset. Well, that's going to keep us stuck in the infant level of emotional maturity. And that's not where we want to be. That's not at all where we want to be. And that's not good for marriage. That's really not good for marriage to have a spouse get emotionally upset or triggered and not be able to come out of it and come out of it effectively. The developmental psychologists tell us that that is one of the needs that needs to happen, is that must come out of an emotional upset quickly, must come to trust mom and dad. Otherwise, that child that now grows into an adult is going to be in the emotional level of infant emotional maturity, the emotional level of infant emotional maturity. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means then that they're going to be, they didn't get their infant needs met, so they're going to most likely look to their wife. It's one of the reasons they married this woman, is they're going to look to their wife to meet their emotional needs that never got met, to meet the needs that the love bonding that would never got done. They're going to look to a wife to do that, to their wife to do that, if they're a man, or the woman will look to the husband to do that. And guess what? As I told you before, you can't have an adult relationship with the opposite sex that meets an emotional need of infancy. It's just not going to work. So what do those men do? They make their wives their mothers, or they make their husbands their dads. And it just doesn't work. But some people live a whole marriage, do their whole marriage that way. And that is not the kind of marriage that we want to have, and the kind of marriage that I'm talking about, a marriage made in heaven, so that you can have here on earth. So they get stuck. Now, some behavioral scientists have said that they believe that over 60 to 70% of all the men in the United States are at the emotional level of are at the infant level of emotional maturity. Well, I believe, having done all the work that I've done, having, had a church for 12 years, having studied this for years and years and years, I believe it's more like 80 to 90% of all the men are at the infant level of emotional maturity. That's not something that we want to have if we're going to have successful marriages. That's why there's so much divorce. One of the reasons. There's many others, but that's one of the reasons. So we need to be able to have an opportunity to get those emotional and the tasks and requirements done. So how are we going to do that? We're going to have to go back and get those needs met. One of the ways we do that is in the reparenting groups we do. And another way I do that is I've done soul redemption. It's in the book. It's a way that, excuse me, it's a way that Jesus actually changes a person's false beliefs so they don't have as many emotional triggers. And I've done over 2,000 of them, so I'm an expert at it. One of the things that needs to happen is you've got to have less emotional triggers. You've got to have needs met. Well, now, one of the ways you can get your needs met is you can ask God to help you. Because asking God to help you is like asking, like a baby crying for help with mom and dad. Babies are dependent. Infants are dependent. Well, guess what? We're supposed to be dependent upon God. But the problem is most of us can't trust God, and so that causes us a real problem. And so if we can't trust God, then we won't ask God. And if we don't ask God, then we're not going to be able to get out of the infant level of emotional maturity. That's just not going to work very well. So people get stuck in the infant level of emotional maturity, and they don't. Here's one of the things you've got to realize. The developmental psychologists tell us that the needs and tasks at the infant level of emotional maturity must be accomplished before we can go to the child level of emotional maturity. And so if we're still stuck triggering, and if we can't trust, and we can't trust God, and we can't trust other people, then we're going to stay stuck at the infant level of emotional maturity. But my whole plan and my desire is to see you get your infant level needs met and then go to the child level. Now, here's the child level. The child level is basically, it's developmentally, the foundation is trust. So if you didn't get the infant level trust build up, it's going to be very hard to be able to get your child level needs met. And what do I mean by child level needs? Well, children need to be able to learn how to take care of themselves. They need to put a jacket on when it's cold, brush their teeth before they go to bed, go to sleep, get rest, be able to, there's a lot of things, and they're much more difficult for a child that has not built the trust level with parents, because parents really need to help their children to be able to navigate through this child level of emotional maturity. Child level is really based upon parents bringing the child along, nurturing. You probably didn't get nurtured. I sure as heck didn't get nurtured, but that's what's supposed to have happened. It didn't, so we have to get nurturing from someplace else. And that's where we get it from reparenting, and we can get it from safe people and people that can help us. But that's what's in the book, and that's why you need to get that book. But here's the thing. Child level of emotional maturity, child needs to learn to take care of themselves. They need to know who they are. They need to have likes and dislikes. They need to be able to tell their mom and dad what they like and what they don't like. They especially need to do hard things. I know a lot of adults that can't still do hard things. It's really sad when that happens. What happens is that they get stuck at the child level of emotional maturity. Can't do hard things. You know, if you can't do hard things, you're not going to be able to really want to be an initiator. You're not going to be wanting to get things going. You're not going to try new things if you're, stuck because you didn't do the hard things. You got to be, children at the child level, they need to be able to set some boundaries. Now, what happens if your parents are busting your boundaries or they're rolling over your boundaries? They don't give you choices. If you don't get choices, if parents, because they don't, look, I need to say this. Parents did the best they could, and it was woefully not enough. They didn't do what they needed to do, but they didn't know. Most parents just have kids. They don't know how to raise them. That's one of the reasons I'm going to be writing the next book is going to be about successful parenting. How does a parent raise a child? We're not going to get into that today, but that's what happens. Parents don't know how to be able to help their children to come out of the child stage and go into the adult stage. And so they get stuck. And when you get stuck at the child level of emotional maturity, that's a real problem. So what happens then if somebody actually skips the infant level and the child level and looks like they're very, very mature? We call those, the behavioral scientists call those people pseudo-mature. They're pseudo-mature because they really end up having a maturity level. It looks like they can do stuff. They're people that really have skipped the infant level and the child level, and they've gone straight through to a pseudo-maturity. Why? Well, because they really can't take care of themselves. They really trigger easily. They don't trust. What they are is they're rescuers. They're rescuers. They like to rescue people. Their self-image is based on rescuing people and people loving them for rescuing them. They don't know how to get their needs met because they skip the infant level and they skip the child level. And so they don't know how to be able to, many times, they're good workers, they do a lot of stuff, but they don't, it's all about you. With a pseudo-mature person, it's all about you. They want to rescue you. And so we don't want to be pseudo-mature. My wife, when she was here before she went to heaven, had a heart attack and went to heaven, she was pseudo-mature. She took care of everybody else but herself. That's one of the reasons she is in heaven, is because she didn't take care of herself the way she should have. And she couldn't trust. She couldn't trust God. She couldn't trust me. She couldn't trust men. So it was a very difficult time, but she could sure rescue people. And so that's what she did. And pseudo-mature people actually have to call time out, stop rescuing people, and go back and get their infant level needs met and their child level needs met. And they must be able to get their requirements met for infant and requirements left for actually done for child level. And we know what those are because I just gave them to you. And so these pseudo-mature people really are not who they look like they are. So if we can get the infant level needs met and requirements done, if we can get the child level needs met and requirements done, we can then go to the adult level. And the adult level is where life really gets good. The adult level is where we actually end up being able to take care of ourselves because we've been through the infant level. We don't trigger like we did before. We've gotten all the child tasks and requirements done, or enough of them. We can do hard things. We can take care of ourselves. We actually can. We know we have good boundaries. We actually are able to initiate and do stuff. At the adult level, we can take care of one other person. That means I can be married at the adult level. It's not good when an infant level man marries a pseudo-mature woman, and that's oftentimes what happens. That's what happened with me, because then it just is, she's one up, he's one down. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work well at all. It's at the adult level where we have mutual relationship. In the infant level and child level, there's no real, the child doesn't give as much, the infant takes too much. And so that's what ends up happening. So in marriage, you can't give too much and take too much because it goes out of whack. So at the adult level, it's mutual. It's called mutual reciprocity or mutual beneficial. It's mutually beneficial to both parties. And so at the adult level, it is a wonderful place to be because these other things have been dealt with. And so at the adult level, that's where marriage should not be between children and infants at the emotional level. It should be between two adults, but it very seldom is. That's one of the reasons there's so many problems in marriage, is because very seldom is an adult woman marries an emotionally adult. I'm talking about emotional. Emotionally adult woman marries an emotionally adult man. Very seldom does that happen because they can trust God, they can trust each other, they are able to love themselves. They're good at the great commandment. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. They love themselves, they love their neighbor, in this case their wife, and they can do it in a give and take. And it's just a wonderful place to be. There's not one up, one down, and so it's a wonderful place to be. And that's where I'm going to help you get to. I'm going to help you get to the adult emotional level of that level where marriage is such a dream. Marriage is such a wonderful, wonderful institution, and it's so wonderful to be in that position. That's a marriage made in heaven experienced here on earth. And so we're going to get there. But you look at and see where you fit. Are you an infant? Are you a child? Are you an adult? Most of you will be infants and children, but we're going to get you there. God's going to help you. The book can help you. And we're going to be continually giving you solutions to the problem so you can have a great marriage and you can be blessed.